History keeps repeating. Police brutality, protests, riots.
Too much brothers and sisters that look like us dying, and we're tired of it.
That's because every 40 hours, a Black American dies at the hands of police.
We just want justice for our people.
So after decades of protesting, why hasn't anything changed?
I'm tired of it. It's standing right there. And I understand. I'm tired of it, man. I understand.
Emotions are raw across the United States.
I want you tonight. Yell as loud as you want to yell.
The anger we're seeing is rooted in decades of police violence against Black Americans.
People do not necessarily see the police in Black communities as protectors. They do see the police as instigators and as individuals to be afraid of.
And those fears are backed by statistics.
Police killings actually is among the leading causes of Black men dying in the United States.
You heard that right. In fact, use of force by police is the 6th most common cause of death for young Black men. It's just behind heart disease and cancer, with homicides and suicides near the top of that list. And young Black men are more than twice as likely to die at the hands of police than white men.
Understanding the history of American policing as it relates to the context that it comes out of, which is slavery, helps explain why there has always been historically a tension between police and members of the Black community.
This looks like a normal police badge, but it actually belonged to one of the first official police forces in the United States, the Runaway Slave Patrol. They were tasked with chasing down slaves and preventing revolts. In the late 19th century, the police enforced Jim Crow laws that led to segregation. And a few decades later, lynchings happened at a rapid pace in the United States, largely because they were supported by local police.
By the time we get to the 1960s, police forces are playing a key role in trying to suppress the civil rights movement and trying to limit the movements of activists, particularly throughout the U.S. South.
The civil rights movement did bring about change, voting rights, and an end to segregation. But the policing problem still persists.
What this moment has done for us is to get us to realize that you never quite fight for rights and accomplish your goals and celebrate and say, great, we've done it. This is wonderful. Let's move on.
In the last decade, a national outcry over police brutality has often been followed by calls for change.
In starting this career, we take an oath to serve and protect. I would like to say that that officer failed on both aspects.
It's time that we take these bad officers and speak out against them and start holding them accountable and hold them to the same laws that we expect citizens to abide by.
Some practices have changed. Most departments have begun using body cameras, and the Justice Department had launched investigations into the use of force. But since 2017, many of those have been shelved.
But is your sense that you achieved any actual progress when you were chief? You sound quite powerless.
I would say, yes, of course we made progress. But when you look at the death of George Floyd, it's really hard to look at any progress that you made and feel good about that.
In a first for Minnesota, a white officer will face criminal prosecution for the death of a Black civilian.
Our country has under-prosecuted these matters in Minnesota and throughout the country. That, I think, is the origin of the trust problem.
A recent analysis found 99% of police killings from 2014 to 2019 did not result in officers being charged, let alone being convicted of a crime. And one prosecution in Minnesota won't erase a history of brutality.
It disturbs me that my most prized possession I gotta feel like he's not safe.
It's been so many Black men and women, brown men and women for decades and centuries that George Floyd is maybe the straw that breaks the camel's back.
If we don't ensure that when officers commit these crimes, because they are crimes, that they face retribution, then they will just continue to happen again and again. We keep finding ourselves in the same place because we're not actually interested in making the radical changes that is required to see a future that doesn't look like our current reality.